If I left the planet, would I be satisfied with what I had accomplished thus far? I would regret not getting these tools into the hands of as many coaches, therapists, psychotherapists as possible. A laser sharp precision tool that works at the root cause of every maladaptive behavior.
Welcome to Strategy in Action, where we reveal how industry leaders build real market gravity, the force that naturally attracts opportunities, partnerships, and profits. You get raw insights, proven frameworks, and strategies that actually move the needle in your business. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 100 of Strategy in Action. I wanted to have my good friend, Gary De Rodriguez, on the show for this little bit of a momentous episode here for number 100. And we have just a phenomenal conversation, of course. If you don't know, I do a show with Gary called Concentric. I've known him, for 7 or 8 years now. I feel like forever. Just an amazing human being that he is. And he happens to be someone who is transforming the lives of others and has done so for so many years now. 30, 40 years of doing that, just tens of thousands of people he has helped over the years. And you listen to him for any length of time and you understand why and how he's done that from his insights, his wisdom, and those folks that he's helped and helped himself. He's developed these processes and insights that are absolutely transformational. And what he's discovered and what we dig into today is this idea of resolving trauma in your life as the foundation of those transformations, right? Anything you're trying to change, accomplish, reach, if you haven't resolved some of these either core or acute traumas in your life, you're going to keep hitting that ceiling and keep feeling that feeling of just being stopped, being slowed, being, just in the muddiness if you don't know why. And one of the big things we get into is this idea that, trauma itself, like that word, it can be, we have these labels for things and we think that that's only one big giant event or abuse or accident or something that's happened. And a lot of times it's a minor event that happens in terms of what you experience. But when you experience that at such a young age, when we are in those impressionable years, and for whatever reason, our minds at 5, 6 years old just turn that into meaning this one thing. And you've built your entire life on that if someone says this to me, it means this, and therefore, I am this. And now in life, you just say, I'm this kind of person. And if you track that back, it's only because you attached that meaning at such a young age to that comment or that action from someone else. And now it's anchored in. And so the process that Gary has is absolutely incredible for going in and neutralizing that trauma, that event, or that ongoing feeling that you have without even having to dig into exactly what it is with him, for instance. That's another aspect of this. It's really powerful that you can resolve some of these things. And actually, that term neutralizing is really the most important one. It's not like you forget that this thing happened or that you've ever felt this way. What you're doing is scrambling and neutralizing the emotion attached to that event or that feeling. And that's what's really powerful when we get into. So you're going to love this. Gary is doing amazing work, certifying others to do this kind of work as well. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Gary after this episode and, either for working with him directly to resolve some of this, and or bringing that into your own practice as another tool to really help people in this world. All right, let's jump in. Gary De Rodriguez, welcome to the show.
It's so good to be here, Jason.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun. It's always a blast anytime we can connect. And I really wanted to have you here for episode 100 of Strategy and Action. It's a little milestone episode here. And, we have so many episodes together with Concentric, but I really wanted to have you here on this show speaking to other coaches, consultants about this idea of certainly of trauma. And we're going to define that for folks as we go through this as well. But the work that you're doing right now specifically is around, taking care of these traumas, both core, acute, like all of these areas as the basis of, any kind of change work, any transformation work. And it's at the core and it's so important. So I want to dig into that. But let's give folks a little bit of geography. I mean, they can check out an episode of, the Jason Croft Show back in the day to any of our Concentric episodes to learn even more. But I want to make sure that folks have a nice baseline of your background. I mean, you've coached one or two people, I think, in the past, done a little bit of this work, at least a couple of months, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. About 30, 40 years doing this, about 30,000 clients later. Been doing this for a really, really long time.
Yeah,
That's a lot of gray hair, Jason. This is a gray hair of many coaching clients. So
that's right. Gray hair of love. Right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the thing. Give us those specs and that outline and a little bit of, what you were sharing as we went into this before we hit record too, of a bit of the purposeful shift in your coaching right now too, and what you're focusing on.
Yeah, I got really clear about a year and a half ago that I wanted to pivot my business because I had a health crisis and something I could have died from, and I'm good now. But I realized that if I left the planet, would I be satisfied with what I had accomplished thus far? I've accomplished a lot, but my answer was no. And I asked myself, like, why is that? And I was like, I would regret not getting these tools into the hands of as many coaches, therapists, psychotherapists as possible, because it is such a laser sharp precision tool that works at the root cause of every maladaptive behavior. What I mean by that, I know that sounds kind of grandiose, but if we look at how we develop our filters, the way that we see our individual worlds through, it is literally from stimulus coming into the five senses, a core significant event or core significant events. And because we're meaning-making creatures, we create constellations of beliefs around those events. The more that we believe something is true, we form those neural pathways. We start sorting for the evidence that those beliefs are real and true. And that begins to become the lens, the colored lens in which we see everything, ourselves, the world, our relationships. And when I look at all the clients that I have worked with through the years, I noticed that if you don't work at the root cause and you're working more on the shifting the behavior, or aligning the goals and moving forward with those, have an unstoppable drive to achieve, they always will get tripped up down the road on their quest for success because they're carrying the boulders of unresolved events on their backs running up the mountain to their success. And I kept seeing people have inconsistent results in coaching. I had many coaches come to me and say, I don't know how to deal with this level of complexity. I don't. And they need it and I can't move forward where I want them to be able to achieve. And I don't feel trained well enough to work at that level. So I developed years ago a technique called the trauma memory resolution technique. My whole career started in the AIDS community because in those days you were diagnosed, you were a skeleton in 3 months. There was nothing that you could do. And I jumped into that community and I began this quest to find accelerated change techniques to help people get to resolution with their life in an expedient manner. And hence, I came across NLP, which evolved into humanistic neurolinguistic psychology, more of the advanced techniques, and then my own discoveries with the 30,000 plus clients I've seen through my career. And there I found that when I began to innovate on the fly in my sessions with clients and the innovation got results, I would write it all down. And I began to develop other techniques, but this one, the trauma memory resolution technique, is by far the most expedient way to resolve trauma. Under 30 minutes, the change is permanent. They'll never be able to feel it in the same way ever again. It begins to automatically shift the constellation of beliefs that were created at the time of the trauma. The client can not tell you anything about what the event was, so it can be done completely content-free. And it can be taught to the client to self-facilitate themselves. So the flexibility, the adaptability of the process is so unique, so wildly effective. Right now, I'm having several psychotherapists show up and go, "We need to get this into the psychotherapy community." And I'm like, I know, you know, but it is that effective. I was telling you before we started that I have students right now that aren't even through their certification. They're 2 weeks in, and they're already doing sessions with clients, and they're sending me the testimonials that their clients, unsolicited, sent to them saying, "Oh my God, how did this happen? This is like the fastest change I've ever seen." I'm like, "You guys aren't even certified yet." And they're already getting that kind of result. So I look at my life and I think, this is ultimately the thing that I really want to spend the rest of my breaths doing, because it is so meaningful and it creates such profound change with people.
I love it. Walk us through a little bit of it at its core, and for folks too who maybe, trauma is one of those words that's pretty weighted, and there's 100 definitions in terms of our perception of that word, because it can, obviously we talk about big, horrible events, but sometimes that trauma can be, at a certain age, at 3 or 4, a tiny little event, like you said, we give meaning to, and it with our 3 or 4 year old little self, that, wow, and it becomes this thing. So for a lot of people who maybe dismiss that term of like, oh, I've never had a traumatic event, it's like we all have, in terms of shifting from what we thought the world was to a new belief about what the world is, and we've built our lives around that. Talk a little bit about that, and then I want to get into how do we even unpack and where to start to heal some of this.
That's a great question, Jason. Thank you for that. Um, it's been proven medically that the facial expressions of a mother with a preverbal infant will cause a child PTSD. Yeah, think about that. This is how we have to start beginning to look that our experiences is very much affects just the root of us all. Now, let me just elaborate on that a little bit, because that was a big statement for me to make just then. But I did read a study and they said this is absolutely been proven. So there's different types of trauma. There's acute trauma, which is one big granddaddy event that pivots your life forever. And those are, of course, what people generally assume is trauma. But there's other types of trauma as well. There's complex trauma, which means trauma that happens either repetitively over and over again or multiple types of trauma that occur to the individual through their life. But there's another type of trauma that isn't, I don't believe, I've never seen it, identified this way, but this is what I've noticed in my practice for the last 35 years, is that there's compounding trauma. Small events that have a commonality of emotion that happen over and over and over and over again until the person has so much evidence that the meaning they gave those experiences and the emotions, the connecting emotion that runs through them all like a string of pearls, like the pearls of the individual event, but the string is like maybe I'm not good enough, or I can't be trusted, or I'm not lovable, whatever it is. Those small compounding events over time are sometimes one type of trauma that actually really stifles a person's capability of breaking free into the individual they've come here to be. So unless we begin to start looking at, and I'm going to talk just a pinch about, extreme ownership. If we look at that, we are the ones that ascribe the meaning to the events in which we are experiencing. The meaning we ascribe to it will either make it very traumatic or marginally traumatic or not traumatic at all. The bottom line is that we do have a role in the impact of the trauma. I've had lots of trauma in my life. I've worked on it my whole life. I'm freer now than I have ever been because I self-facilitate myself. I write out lists when I find different traumatic events. I just write them out on a list, and then on the weekend I'll go, oh, okay, I'm going to go through these, and I'll do 3 or 4 of them a day, and until I don't have those events anymore with an emotional impact on me. And so that is something. If we're all looking for peace, and this is no joke, I've meditated for 53 years. And I have more peace now, not necessarily from my meditation, but from actually doing the trauma work on myself, especially the compounding traumas. So we have acute trauma, we have compounding trauma, we have got complex trauma. We also have transgenerational trauma, which are the traumatic feelings and emotional states that have been handed down through our ancestry, and we have it in our DNA. And some people scratch their heads and go, I don't get that. But this is how it happens. I had the great good fortune of being on the reservation of the Arikaran Nation in North Dakota. And I was speaking to one of the elders, and there's so much diabetes. It's shocking. It's like almost 80 to 90% of the tribe has some form of diabetes, and only, 2 dialysis machines on the reservation itself. So I said, what is causing this scourge of diabetes amongst your people? And she said that we feel constantly the inhumanity to man that was wielded upon our ancestors. We feel the sadness and the hopelessness that they have felt. And I sat back and I went, wow. And she said, there's no escaping it. And that kind of broke my heart. The same thing is true of the Aboriginal people. There's diabetes throughout the Aboriginal communities because their ancestors are the dirt, because the blood, the bones, the flesh, the thoughts, the prayers of their ancestors are now the dirt. And they're like, when you take us off our land, we lose connection to our ancestors. Most communities don't understand that because that isn't where we are. We have an externalized acquisition of land and property and assets. The Aboriginal people do not see that. That's completely foreign. And Native Americans, I can't speak for everybody, but that is my impression as well. When the land is taken away, it's very traumatic. So the deal is that we have these influences. I know in my ancestry, We had my father's side, both sides were stone poor, like stone poor. And my mother's side was filled with incest, child molestation, rape, alcoholism, drug addiction. The whole thing happened on my mother's side. She was very traumatized all her life and never got help. And that all like handed down and like came into me. So my core things that I struggled with for many, many years was addictions, was the kind of sexual aspects that addictions will bring to you, and then the poverty aspects as well, how to break free of the historical, both lines, my patriarch and my matriarch side, all completely impoverished. How do I break out of that? And so it was really, really powerful to begin to start understanding that the transgenerational traumas are within us. And we're the ones that, in my opinion, I stand on the shoulders of all my ancestors that went before me. I hold up the light of possibility and I say, I'm committed. I am committing to doing this differently, to overcome this, to heal it not only for myself, but to heal it for generations back. When I was studying in India, the master in India would say to us, when a soul reaches enlightenment, it brings 25 generations with it. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm up for the game, because I want to wake up as wide awake as I could possibly be and make as much progress as I can. And then I help all my ancestors. So the bottom line is that we have to begin to start looking at that this role of trauma, which is always at the root cause of maladaptive behavior, something happened that caused people to build shields around them of protection. Either they become aggressive or they become passive. And we have limiting beliefs that says, yes, you can, or no, you absolutely cannot. And those limiting beliefs, until they are challenged and neutralized, they will stay in operation at the subconscious level for our entire life. And what I discovered was that when we neutralize the birthplace of those limiting beliefs, those core specific memories, when we neutralize those, the limiting beliefs completely change. I do this pre-assessment and a post-assessment with clients before I'm going to do trauma work, which is the list of limiting beliefs. And they'll mark 1 to 10, 10, I totally believe it, 1, don't believe it at all. And they'll have like 8 or 9 that are marking out of 10 to an 8. When we're done with the trauma work, I reassess them on the same exact beliefs, and they all are marked down at a 2 or a 3 or a 0. So we have to start looking at the core of us, those core specific events. They have to be emotionally neutral, and then the beliefs will change naturally. Now, there's a physiological, biological reaction to all this. Because what happens is when we're sitting on compacted emotions and compacted core events that have unresolved negative emotions to them, an event happens out here. And what our reptilian brain does, it just clicks in, goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And then we lose, and that shuts down our frontal lobes. Then we lose the ability to actually reason. And then we're trying to control our emotions because we are in reaction with all the cortisol and adrenaline and insulin running through our bodies. So people wonder why can't I respond differently? Why can't I act differently? Why do I feel like I feel? It's because you have unresolved trauma. And until that unresolved trauma feels neutral, that chemical reaction in your body will happen when you become triggered by a conversation, a personality, or an external event of some kind.
Yeah. And I know where a lot of people's heads go immediately to, especially if they don't have, hey, this happened to me, there was a big traumatic event, this happened to me. If they don't have those things, is where do we start, right? How do I know? And I think one place to start are these core this is who I am type of beliefs. Or, I just react that way. That's just who I've always been. Or I've never been good at this. I've never been able to handle this. And that's a great place to start, are these absolutes, because very often, you know, that is just built around, oh, why do you feel that way? Oh, because of this evidence that you're talking about too. Like, you can start walking them back. It's like, okay, but why? But why? But why? Where do you go back? And then a lot of times I think just that awareness, like, oh wow, maybe this isn't true. I've just been living it as though it were true, which, like you talked about, brings the evidence, and you build all of that. What is that process that you kind of do with folks to find those things,
Yeah.
to walk them back like that?
Yeah. I mean, I will start with this one little metaphor and then answer that. We're Most of us live in this state of hypnosis. And what I mean by that is that we have entranced ourselves to be quite unaware of the inner workings, not only of our emotional states, but our thinking patterns. Many people are like a frog in a slow boiling pot who just adapts to the pain and keeps adapting to the pain until the pain breaks them. So, and they break in drug addictions, alcoholism, sexual addictions, uh, broken relationships, inability to connect with others, sexual dysfunction because they have too much fear and low self-esteem and afraid of performance of some type, and or they can't connect with another person because their trust has been completely broken. All of those things I have great compassion for. And the bottom, because I've lived them, the bottom line is that unless we start becoming more self-aware and curious about how we become us. Like, I often get up on stage and, I'll be talking at a conference and I'll go, "How did you become you?" And no one will answer. And I go, "No, seriously, how did you become you? How did you develop to have the beliefs you have and to look at the world the way you do and have the reactions you have in your relationships and in your business and in your career and to your family or your family of origin or your current family? How did you become you? Are you just this driving servo mechanism that just says drive, drive, drive and slay it, slay it, slay it?" That's not life. That's not even reasonable and it's not sustainable. And people can't answer it. And when I say to them, you had core significant events occur to you from birth on. You develop constellations of beliefs, and those build upon other belief systems and other belief systems until you develop a unconscious strategy on how you're going to survive this world. And people sit back and go, that makes sense to me. And I'm like, yeah. And then I say, get a memory right now. And they'll get a memory. And it's like, I say, "Are you seeing a picture?" And everyone goes, "Yes." And I say, "Are you hearing any sounds?" About half the audience will say yes. And then I ask, "Are you happy feelings?" And everybody says yes. I go, "Okay, so the database in which you reference for your reality on how you're going to respond to your now situations is based upon a database of pictures, sounds, and feelings that constitute your collective experiences, and then what you made up about those collective experiences." And then I ask, if those events are compacted with negative emotions and fears and jealousies and sometimes terror, are you going to act in a way that's proactive or are you going to be reactive? What is going to happen to your ability to respond to your now events, carrying around as your history and your database on how you survived different aspects of your life? How do you think you're going to respond? Are you going to have absolute free will? Are you going to be going into fight, flight, or freeze, or some variation thereof? What is it going to be? Are you free? And the answer is no, you're not, because you haven't done the in-depth work yet to go to the collection of your what's happening in your database of picture, sounds, and feelings. So, to answer your question, what I do is I have them write out a series of emotions that they most constantly feel. And oftentimes I have to supply a list and have them choose from it because people are unaware of even the categories of emotions. This is how asleep we are. And it's not like it's our fault, like we've done something wrong. No, we've been hypnotized by our responsibilities, by raising a family, by doing work, by trying to slay it and move ahead and get our cars and our houses and all those things. And before you know it, people become completely disassociated from the alignment to their core. Seeking for happiness out here when actually the contentment and the fulfillment is in the alignment of who you've come here to be. So once they identify the emotions, I say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to make a list. Take one emotion at a time. Make a list of all the times you felt that emotion from the earliest time that you can remember to now. And they'll write out this big long list. And then I'll say, prioritize them. Prioritize these events from really next to nothing to that was pretty major for me. And then we have this plethora of data that we can now, I do the big ones. I have my clients, I train my clients how to self-facilitate. Then they self-facilitate themselves on the minor ones, the compounding memories. And they do 2 or 3 a day. I had one client tell me, oh yeah, I do 2 or 3 in the shower when I'm, taking my shower in the morning. And then I'm ready to go to work and I just go to work. And I go, how many did you get done this week? He said, I got about 20 done. I'm like, awesome. And I go, how are you feeling? He goes, I feel more peace than I've ever felt in my life. I've had people say because a lot of the physiological ramifications of trauma is it seems like trauma shows up in the spine more than anywhere else. Every vertebrae has a thought, form, and emotional component to it. If I know the vertebrae that is subluxating, I know the emotion that they need to work on, and I go in and I work on those emotional states and the events that held those core emotional states, and the spine clears like that. 30 years of chronic pain will cease.
Wow.
It's bizarre. I think it's bizarre, but it's bizarre. But it absolutely does that. I've had people, irritable bowel syndrome is one of the main issues around suppressed trauma. And when I had one client with really bad IBS, and she said, Gary, I've been doing this process on myself. She said, I have never felt so much peace in my entire life, and my IBS has completely ceased. I'm like, wow. So
My
we have
goodness.
to look at the impact of trauma on the physical body because it's huge, 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 huge. It's a known contributing factor to cancers, to diabetes, to lung disease, to heart disease, and to irritable bowel syndrome. It's also been proven statistically that 2/3 of all addicts have unhealed childhood trauma. And I can testify to that. I was a IV using meth addict from the time I was probably 14 till I was about 18. I should have died, but didn't. And I know why I got strung out on meth, because I was so emotionally destroyed by the trauma that happened in my family system that when I would hit up meth, what would happen to me is I would become this incredibly loving individual, like who I actually am. I felt like I would return to the core of me, and I would love everything and everyone around me. And then, of course, it wears off. You crash 10 times worse than you were before. So that is not a strategy for success. But the bottom line is, I know why I did it. It was the emotional pain I carried. I couldn't find myself because of the impact and the intensity of the emotional pain I carried around my family system. And so we look at, why are people homeless? Why do people lose their mental health? Why are people on such drugs and alcohol? They become hopeless because they can't heal the pain that they are carrying. And then go, why is there a mental health crisis? There's a mental health crisis because the psychological community, Freudian and Jungian psychologies, do not have the answer to heal trauma. And they try to suppress all the people that are trying to heal trauma. Oh, you can't call it trauma. I'm calling it trauma. You know why? because I don't have to know one thing about the event, not one thing, because this is about the science of how the traumatic events have come into your nervous system, what we've done with it in pictures, sounds, and feelings. It's straight NLP. Straight NLP. The process works with eye patterns. There's no doubt about that. Connie Ray Andreas, let's give kudos to where kudos are deserved. Connie Ray Andreas, I was having lunch with her once. I was in a training with her. She owned NLP Comprehensive with her husband. I can't remember his name right now. Steve Andreas. And we're at this training. We went and had lunch. And she started telling me the story about using eye patterns to help this painter, she has painting her house, stop smoking. And she said, all I did was just, do this eye pattern thing with him. And he quit smoking that day and never smoked again. I'm like, huh. And I'm working with the AIDS community. So I'm like, okay, anything I can get to accelerate change, I'm going to take on. So I started experimenting with eye patterns. And sure enough, it began to have some really powerful results. Now, it's not EMDR. As far as I'm concerned, EMDR took the eye pattern sequencing from the NLP model. I can't prove that. But the truth of it is, eye patterns existed way before EMDR existed. So this does not come from EMDR. What this is, it comes from the heart and soul of NLP. And then I know that when the eyes are moving, they're actually activating the hippocampus and the amygdala. And those are known to hold episodic memories, especially the hippocampus. We've got one on the left side, one on the right side of our brains. And when the eyes are moving, it activates it. It intensifies the hippocampal kind of activity. Now, when we're moving the eyes, what it does is it scrambles up how that event, especially when you're holding on to the event and you're in the event and you're feeling it, you're seeing it, you're smelling it, you're tasting it, you're in it, and you're moving your eyes in radical different directions, what will happen is it'll start to scramble up how that event originally entered your nervous system. So retrieving that negative event in the same way again is going to be much more difficult. But then we do what I call meta resources. We have the 5 senses and 2 additional resources that we map into that event. As we move the eyes, we're just mapping those resources in. By the time we're done, the client can't access it in the same way. They can't see it in the same way. They can't experience it in the same way. And so if you distort the internal representation and you scramble up the eye pattern strategy that the event originally entered the nervous system, poof, you're done in sometimes 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The longest I've ever taken with any client was 45 minutes because their trauma was off the charts. But the bottom line is, it's doable. I've taught 13-year-old girls to help save their friends from suicide because they were being molested by doing this event. So if they learn to do this, kids can learn to do this. I'm like, I want to get this out to every parent there is on the planet because what will happen is a parent will have the most dynamic parenting tool ever to help their child never to experience or carry, not experience it. Kids will always experience trauma, but to carry that trauma unresolved their whole life. This is why you can see I'm pretty passionate about this, but I've seen too many miracles. I have to get this out into the hands of people. And I want to thank you for asking me these questions and having this be the topic of our 100th episode for you, because it is a game-changing, life-changing, community-enriching, parenting salvation, military. If we talked about the military, oh my God, because quite frankly, you can teach because folks in the military do not want to talk about their trauma. They don't have to with this. I want to get together and especially train Navy SEALs, Special Forces on how to facilitate each other. So no one has to speak about what they're working on. No one has to reveal anything, but they can neutralize the traumatic events that are causing so many of our key and most important forces in every country, Australia, North America, Great Britain, to actually not commit suicide because they can't handle the pictures, sounds, and feelings that's rolling through their heads all the time. So in my opinion, and this is not puffing. I'm just super passionate to get this out there because, I'm 72. I probably have another 10 years of 14-hour days in me. And then I need to go to Maui, get completely tattooed and pierced, and just lay on a beach somewhere. But for now, this is what my heart and passion is, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And, I often talk about the reason I love working with coaches so much is that ripple effect. Because if I can get them exposure, help them, get their message out more, there's a ripple effect in who they're helping. And to me, this is absolutely the ultimate ripple effect of ripple effects, right? It's empowering those coaches in a way that they have never been empowered before with this kind of tool that then allows them to move in those directions and their specialty that they help people with already. What they're doing becomes that much more effective because that client can, move to the next level, can, work on this specific skill that they're helping them with once they've let go and neutralized a lot of these events. So that's why I'm so passionate about getting your story out there in your certification and your training for this. And it's just amazing. And I've been impressed with you for many years now that we've known each other. And I'm honored that we're dear friends as well at this point. And it's so much fun. And I'm amazed at the work you're doing, and I appreciate you being on to help share this. I think we've painted a great picture of who needs this and to reach out. How do they? What's the best way to go? Okay, I've got to learn more about this from Gary.
The very best way is to contact my team at support@peopleistic.com. That's PEOPLEISTIC. So support@peopleistic.com. And one of my team members or myself will answer that inquiry. If you really desire to know more about what we're doing, the training schedule, and all of that, that's just another other place to get it. Just email that email address, and we'll get that information to you.
Fantastic, Gary. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for being on today.
Well, I just love you, Jason, and the service you do. I need to accolade you a little bit. The service you do. You have one of the best hearts in the business. You got great hair, so that's always really important. And
actually, that should be first, hair first, then heart, then let's get the things right. Come on.
But your contribution is huge to help people get their message out into the world and to really help as many people as we can. So thank you. God bless you. I really appreciate it, Jason.
Thanks so much. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Strategy in Action. Remember, true industry leaders don't chase opportunities, they attract them. Want to build your own market gravity? Visit MediaLeadsCo.com. See you next time.